Hello and welcome back to our Node.js and Express tutorial series here on Turbo 360. In the previous video, we set up our own custom main.js route and we set up a template and did some basic rendering with the Mustache templating engine. So in this video, we're going to continue that process by doing more rendering with a little bit more sophisticated data, things like arrays and images and things like that, and show how Mustache really works in a variety of situations. So let's go ahead and get started. So here I am in the root level of my project, and here I am in my terminal. I'm going to run the server, the local dev server, and make sure everything is still in proper working order. So let's head over to localhost 3000, and everything still looks good, so we're all set to go. So turn off the server, and let's dive back into the code. So here we are in the main.js route that we set up in the previous video. So here it is right here, and we have a template for this as well called landing. So that's right here. Okay, so here's our template that we set up, and I'm just going to tell VS Code this is HTML. And you'll see that we have two values being rendered here, which are pretty simple, just strings. So there's a lot of other situations we have to be considerate of, like how do you render an array, how do you render images, things like that. So let's go ahead and do an array first. So going back to our main.js file, we have our data object, and I'm going to add a new key called languages, which is going to be an array of programming languages that I know. So that's going to be an array of JSON objects. Let's go with name, JavaScript, and then another key for years of experience, JavaScript. So, and then let's add two more languages. So let's do, next is Python, and that's about 4 years. And let's do Swift, and that's also 5 years. Okay, so here we have a very simple array of programming languages. So now in order to render that in the template, we head over back here, and let's create a heading here, H3, programming languages. Let's create an ordered list. And so inside of an ordered list, we want to render a list item tag for each programming language, right? And this is basically what's going to be rendered in the loop. So what we want to do is create a double curly brace, the Mustache templating syntax, and languages is the name of the key that holds the array. But since we're looping through the array, we add one more item before the word. We add a hashtag, which indicates to the Mustache templating engine that this is a loop. And then to close the loop, we create another placeholder, and with this time, instead of hashtag, we do a slash. And basically everything inside represents the loop. So Mustache will loop through the languages array that we pass through and render whatever we tell it to in here. And inside each loop, the templating engine has access to the data object inside the loop. So that has a name and a years key. So I can do name and then comma years of experience. And you'll see inside we're just using the same templating syntax. So we can now test if this works by going back to the shell and running the dev server. And then head over to localhost, and we have our array of programming languages, all three of them, without having to write literally all three inside the actual HTML, which is nice. So what we can do now is head back to the main.js, and we can add another language. Let's say I'm picking up a new language, C#, and let's say I've done that for about a year. I can just add that, and then this will show up in the array rather than adding that manually in the HTML, which is pretty convenient. So that's how you handle loops in the Mustache templating engine. Another common scenario is an image. So let's say we want to add a profile image to this. So I'm going to add another key on top. Let's call it image profile. And really what this should be is a string linking to the image on the web, preferably your server, which is what we're eventually going to do. But right now we're just going to grab an image. I just did a quick Google image search of Bill Gates. Obviously you can do whatever you want. And I grabbed this image, and this is the actual image. This, I guess this is his Twitter profile icon. And what we want is this actual image link right here. And we want to pass that in as the value of this key. And then we have image profile. And then what we do in the template is we just create an image tag. That's a little hard to explain right now, but it's for image tags or image URLs. We want to use triple curly brace instead of double curly brace. The short of it is anytime we're rendering an actual HTTP link, generally speaking, it's better to do triple curly brace than double. And that's not a hard rule. It'll actually work fine with double, but a triple is better in this scenario. So if I reload, you'll see a big picture of Bill Gates and all the other content that we added on the bottom. So yeah, that's it. So another feature of the Mustache templating engine is it enables us to render blocks of HTML. So if you take a look at what we have here, we're really just rendering strings, raw strings, one at a time, which is pretty easy and pretty light. But sometimes you want to render a huge chunk of HTML. This happens a lot when you have a UI that gets reused in multiple pages. So for example, like a footer or like a nav bar, those things show up on multiple pages, and by and large they look exactly the same every time. So whenever that happens, you want to use a partial, something called a partial, which basically just allows you to render a chunk of HTML. So let's say here on the bottom I want to add a contact form. Let's do that right now real quick. So right here in the bottom, let's create a form, and let's add an input. Email, and then let's add a submit button. Submit. Now, let's say you want to have a contact form like this show up on every page of your portfolio site because you want to make sure that anyone who's interested in working with you can get a hold of you real easily. So what you want to do then is create a partial out of it. And if you notice in the views directory, we already have a partials directory. So what we can do is we can cd into the partials directory, and let's create a new partial called form, and it is a Mustache template, right? So you want to maintain the .mustache extension. Head back to the root directory because it's easy to forget that. And then what we want to do is copy this chunk of HTML and simply paste it in the form. And this effectively becomes a block of HTML that we can reuse anywhere on the site via the partial syntax. So what we do back in the landing template is instead of using this HTML form all 4 lines, we can get rid of this and just type in form. But to indicate that this is a partial, we add a little caret right here, and this tells Mustache that this is a partial rather than just a raw piece of data. And so it'll render a huge chunk of it, or not a huge chunk, but a chunk of HTML that matches with the name of the text you put in right here. So it'll look for this form.mustache, and whatever the HTML contents are, it will render all the contents right here. So if I run the dev server and try it again, I still see the form. And if I want to remove that for a particular page, I can just remove the partial, and then it'll go away. And so yeah, and so that's how you render a block of HTML in the Mustache templating engine. So we'll be using pretty much all of these features and a few more as they come up as we do our work. But this is a pretty brief intro to the Mustache rendering engine and how it works. It'll cover most of our scenarios, and so in the next video, what we're going to do is start using these concepts to build out our UI using most of these concepts. But before I wrap up this video, I'm going to do a quick deploy and make sure everything works the same on staging as it does on local, just so that we're confident that everything will look the way we expect it to look. So I like to finish all my videos with a deploy because that guarantees that that ensures that what we're doing is accurate on the server. So obviously that's more important than localhost. All right, the deployment is up. Let's go ahead and test it out. So we copy and paste the staging link, and here we have the same exact thing on the staging link as we do on localhost. Everything looks the same. The partials are working, got the array looping through perfectly, got the image, everything looks great. So good. So we're in business. Hopefully you got that working on your end as well. And yeah, in the next video, we'll start building out our own actual custom UI for the portfolio site itself and start making it look a little bit more polished and a little bit more professional. So hopefully you got everything working. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.